All right, what's up, my peeps? Joshua Smith here with another GSD mode interview where every single week we interview top entrepreneurs and just straight up top badasses. They're out there dominating their space. These are people choosing to not live a life of mediocrity, but instead to go out there and create epic big lives for themselves and for their families. So today, you guys, got a rock star guest on today, a guy I'm really stoked to have on. Mega team leader out in the Midwest. This guy's crushing it, killing it with expireds, and a lot of different other fronts as well. So really stoked and honored to have Mike Wall on the show. Welcome to the show, my friend.
What up, man?
Yeah,
what's up? Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, dude, I'm stoked, bro. So I know you got a lot going on, dude. I mean, you got a team now doing hundreds of transactions every single year, growing on a very fast pace. You guys are killing it with expireds and other forms of marketing, online marketing, and really excited to get into all of that. But before we talk about that, dude, I'm always interested in our guest journey. You know, like rewind the clocks, dude, back to whether it's high school, college, whatever. Like, what led you into entrepreneurship in the first place?
Yeah, man, that's a great question. So if I think about it, you know, I think that for the most part, for me, it's always been my calling. You know, obviously we go through different stages in life, and for me in high school, you know, I grew up as kind of an athlete, and certainly I worked, you know, different jobs, but I was never the person. And you always hear these stories now. It's like, you know, I started a lemonade stand when I was 5 years old. I wasn't that guy, you know what I mean? Because I was really heavily involved in you know, playing football and baseball and soccer and stuff like that. But I tell you, I think, you know, in different stages of life, when you talk about entrepreneurship, is that, you know, people, you know, for me, for instance, you know, I was working in corporate America, and I knew on some level that, you know, that I couldn't sustain a lifestyle long term that would fulfill me. And so, you know, I came to a point to where it was like, you know, shit or get off the pot. And so that's when I came into like my, you know, entrepreneurship was just kind of through, you know, going through some pain in my life and not feeling like I was purposeful, or that I could live a life long term like I wanted to live. But, you know, rewinding the clock a little bit, I think for me, coming through high school, obviously, going to college, my first taste into real estate was just getting people and having friends of mine at Ohio State when I was going to school there that were actually dropping out of school and like starting to do mortgages. And I had another friend that was actually working for Remax who was just killing it. And he was like, man, he's like, you know, you really ought to come try this. And you know, I kept putting him off. And finally, you know, I was going to school, and then I was doing mortgages, and we did really well just doing mortgages. I don't remember, this is back, you know, when rates were like 7.5%. Now we're all spoiled. But, you know, and then so for me, I went ahead and got my real estate license. This was back in like 2000, 2001. And I never really got serious about it though, Josh. You know what I mean? It was like, I thought maybe someday, you know, I would get into real estate, but I didn't really get the itch yet. You know what I mean? I didn't get the itch yet. And then when I got out of college and moved to the Cincinnati-Dayton area, I got into real estate, just not like you, where, you know, it was kind of, I studied under one of the top agents. Guy's name was Phil Herman, big Remax agent out here in the Midwest. He did like, you know, he was doing like 350 transactions. And I just worked for him as like a buyer specialist. And so, you know, I did that, and it still never really hit me. Like, I don't know if I had that fear of just like, you know, of just doing it all on my own. And it actually took me working a corporate America job and just being absolutely miserable. And I was making $100,000 a year. And, you know, in the Midwest, that's a pretty good lifestyle. You know what I mean? Now, granted, in some other areas, it's not a great lifestyle, but in the Midwest, I mean, you can drive a nice car and you can live in a nice house. But I just was miserable, dude. I knew I couldn't live long-term a life like that. And that's what actually drove me into taking the plunge. And that's when I just started calling expireds. And I worked another job in corporate America. The first thing I did when I would come in, I was in outside sales, is at 8 o'clock every single morning before I went into work, I would call the expireds. And so eventually I built my listing inventory up to where it had 44 listings, and it was costing me more money to be at my corporate America job than it was actually to be in real estate. And so I was able to, you know, go to my wife and say, hey, listen, you know, we're making a ton of money doing this. I'm just doing it part-time. We got 44 listings. are you cool with me just quitting this job? Because granted, at that time I had 2 kids. I had 2 boys. Yeah. And she was on board, dude. And I was like, yeah. And you know what? We've never looked back since. That first year we came over, that was May of 2014, did 57 transactions that year, my first year. Last year we did 104 transactions. And this year we'll do just over 200 transactions, our 3rd year in.
That's crazy, dude. So when you were working then as a buyer's agent, you left that and then you went back to corporate America.
I did, because the market crashed. So and think about it this way: the hardest thing to find then at that point was, I was a buyer specialist, and the hardest thing to find was buyers. Sellers were everywhere. You know what I mean? Everybody wanted to sell, but no one wanted to buy a house. So I tried to ride it out for like a year, I remember. And, this was 2009 when I got out. And then I got a corporate America job. I was actually selling copiers. And I did that for 5 years and I did really well. Like I said, we were earning a 6-figure income, doing really well. Life was, supposed to be great, but, at the end of the day, it wasn't fulfilling what I wanted long term. And so, as I rewind the clock back on that, I mean, those were some dark days, man. You know what I mean? When I was a buyer agent, I can remember writing it out like 2009, 2006. My wife and I had built our 2nd new house. The market was crazy, and then I remember. Come 2009, when I actually got out, we had to short sell our house. Just kind of like ridiculous, man. You know what I mean? So life went from, way up here, kind of down to the depths. It really humbled me. You know what I mean? And so I remember, dude, I'll never forget this. I remember actually between jobs having to cut grass for like a local company, like a landscaping company here, between my position as a buyer agent and then going on at a corporate America job. And dude, it was the most humbling experience in my life. It was the lowest of lows for me. Yeah. But as I sit here and talk to you, and I know you've been through stuff like this too, it's in those moments I think that we learn the most about ourselves. You know what I mean? Like what we're made of. Like I was actually willing to go out and do that to generate a paycheck, versus, just letting go and falling back into some sort of a mediocrity or, whatever other vices people have, whether it be food or alcohol or gambling, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I love it, man. Those low moments become our greatest assets, man. It's tough going through them, but they truly do. So you jump back into the corporate world, dude, and then now, like what gave you the itch to start dialing expireds? Because now you're back in the corporate world, you're making 6 figures. Why expireds? Because you went from being a buyer's agent to, did you see somebody having success with expireds? What made you decide to start attacking expireds and give the itch to start doing that?
I knew for me, it was just like, I'm not sure how much you know about like the copier sales world, but those dudes, man, are tigers, man. It's straight up business to business sales, and you're grinding, and there are no real leads. All you can do is call from business to business, asking people if they're in the market to try and replace their copier or whatever a piece of document technology that they had. And so it's not so much, it's like everything happened perfectly. You know what I mean? So I did that for 5 years. It's a grind job where you're calling and you're trying to get through to people, that are at like a CFO level. So you got to get through gatekeepers. So it's just a grind every day. You're on the phones, and the margins are so much smaller. So for me, I don't know. It's like I broke my back on the phones in the copier world, and then it prepared me to do what I was going to do when I crushed it with expired. So when I started calling expireds every morning, I was just like, oh, dude, this is great. You know what I mean? These people have me out to their house. I list their property, and then it's like, there's like a $3 or $4 or $5, $6 grand in commission. You know what I mean? Because Midwest out here, it's like, it's $150,000 for average price point. But so for me, I was just like ecstatic. So, I printed off, I can remember, I don't know if I still have it around here, but I remember I went onto Mike Ferry's website. I was listening to podcasts. I went onto Mike Ferry's website. I just printed out his generic script and put it right beside my desk. You know what I mean? Then I would just refer back to it. And I just kind of faked it till I made it. You know what I mean? It was just like, I pretended like I was a badass agent when I was actually a nobody, and people bought. And certainly, we've come a long way in a short period of time, but I can tell you it's been an amazing journey, and I feel fortunate and blessed to be where I'm at and to have had that opportunity, because even now today, and you know this just because, you still run a team, the market even 3 years ago was different than the market we're in now. Everybody's getting a real estate license, everybody you talk to.
Yeah. Yeah, it's insane, man. Whenever the market's, you got everybody jumping in. It's always a sign that the market's getting ready to crash again, though, right? You got everybody jumping in, and you see all these discount brokers come, and then we're getting ready for a correction. Okay, dude. So then the question is, you list 44 listings. But dude, you got this corporate job, so you're calling in the mornings, then you're doing your corporate job, then you're trying to do your listing appointments, because we've got a lot of agents that are probably listening to this right now that are in that position, that have another full-time job, and they're trying to figure out, well, how the hell do I balance my schedule? So walk us through what a typical day or week would look like with that, because you're probably like having hesitancy of, oh, well, I've got my other job, so I can't meet with you at that point. Like, how did you kind of dance around that to set appointments, and what did that look like for you?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So, it goes back to just, you got to be completely disciplined with your schedule and how you do things. So fortunately for me, and I know some people don't have the advantage of working an outside sales job. So, the management of that, it was like I would run, I would come in and call like from 8 to 9 or 8 to 9:30. And then I would hit the phones on my corporate America job, trying to set appointments that way. And then then after lunch, I literally would run like 2 listing appointments, and then like two appointments to, go out and quote copiers. And so that's what a typical day would look like. It was the morning on the phones. So first coming in, being disciplined about being there at 8 o'clock, because I like to be the first one on the phones. I like to be the first one that reaches out to expireds every day. And now with all the competition, it's like if I dial today, I'm fortunate enough to be in a situation where I don't have to really dial anymore. Although I kind of still like to do it, just because I know that if anything ever happens, I can always come back to my foundation. But so going back to that, it's like start at 8. Go from 8. You see my cat in the background. Sorry about that. But that's Chloe. She's my Bengal. But anyway, so from 8 to 9:30, so I would grind it out, call in expireds, new and old, and then then it was just phone. So everything from my day was just based on the phones in the morning, prospecting in the morning, and then running appointments in the afternoon. And again, I was fortunate enough to be at a position where I didn't have like management that was, going over my shoulder, saying, hey, what are you doing every minute? And bottom line is I was performing on my corporate America job. So they were never like, why aren't you're not getting it done. So, it's like when you're going to the gym. It's like, the hardest part is when you first start, you know what I mean? So, and it's like, so when you go to the gym, like nobody ever wants to go to the gym, but when you go, after you come home, it's like you feel great and you're glad you went. So for me, it was like when I first started doing it and I got in this repetition of making the calls, then it just became a habit. And then you saw where it went.
Yep. Love it, dude. So I know you mentioned that you printed off the Mike Ferry scripts, but what's just kind of a sample of like what you would say then or what you say now when you list them, just to give our audience an idea?
Yeah, it's totally different now. Just so you know, I mean, it's more. So if I call somebody up now, it's like, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, this is Mike Wall from Keller Williams. Hey, I'm a little curious here. I just sat down in my office. I was looking for your home this morning, and I noticed it showed up as an expired listing, and I was just curious if that were actually true or if you'd gotten the property sold. And I say, my assistant and I were thumbing through the photographs here, and based on the photographs and knowing the location, this seems like something that would have sold. Can you please tell me why it didn't sell? And they're always, oh yeah, I feel like it didn't. We're really surprised it didn't sell. And then obviously they blame the realtor, right? And that's typically the conversation now. I run a Facebook group too where I record my calls, and I have and then I put them on our Facebook group, and so I just help other agents out too in providing my scripts, and then we go through some objections like that. But it's pretty basic. I mean, it's just a compilation of Ben Kenny's script, Mike Ferry script, and some other stuff that's just kind of been put together.
Yeah, I think so many agents have so much resistance because they feel like they've got to have these magical revolutionary scripts. But the reality is, and also people think it's so inundated, but the reality is there's just not that many people really picking up the phone that are really attacking these on a consistent level. So I love it, man. All right, dude. So you got your 44 listings. You jump in full time. And then before I forget, we'll make sure to if you're cool with this, get a link of your Facebook group, put it down here. So if anybody that's watching and listening to this, then they can join if you're cool with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you do 57 deals, dude, your first full-time year in the business. So your average agent's doing what, like 4 deals a year, right? How do so you got your 44 listings, and then you do 57 deals your first year. So you jump in full-time. Is that just you? Did you hire an assistant? Like, walk us through how the hell you do 57 deals in your first year of real estate.
Yeah, that oddly enough was just me. It wasn't until the next year I actually brought on my first full-time assistant. And it's funny that I actually went through this in my head before you called this morning, because I know you've probably dealt with the same things. And in fact, in listening to some of your podcasts, it's like you get into the business, you're doing everything yourself, and you're building out, your systems and processes, or at least hopefully you are, if you eventually want to be a business owner and not, continue to be a real estate agent. But, so what you go through is everything as an agent, where you're doing everything on your own, and then you're building out all your systems and processes while you do that. And then you're looking for help. So then you're saying, I need this admin. So I had my admin she came in the first part of 2015, and obviously took just a ton of weight off me. And so, obviously I was able to hand that off to her, and then we started, obviously increasing production. And then it was probably 2 months later that I brought on my first buyer agent, because, the way I was building my business out then was just like a traditional real estate team. And we can talk about that a little more, because I've kind of morphed into something a little bit differently with the way we're doing stuff with expansion and stuff now. But so, I went with that model, and then eventually I had 3 or 4 buyer agents, and again we churned out 104 deals last year. So it's just been this natural progression. But I can tell you, and I know so many of your listeners probably, especially real estate agents, and you yourself, that the biggest challenge for me has always been getting the right people on the bus. It's just always been, and I'd love to talk to you about that too, because I know your philosophy in some cases has been like, you feel like, I think you can get like 1.8 deals out of every single agent, or I think you have some amazing number like that. And I don't know if it's like, if I should try to, get agents on board, like good quality agents, but I'll digress on that. We'll pick back up on that. So yeah, the natural progression, obviously the real estate team, admin, buyer agents, and then, listing manager. And then now we have all those people in place. We have a director of lead generation. We have 2 ISAs. We have a marketing manager. So obviously we've come a long way.
Yep. Love it, man. So are you still, what's your role now inside the company? Are you still in production? Are you still taking listings? Or are you just now operating as the CEO, if you will?
Yeah, no, I'm in that, and you can probably go back to this yourself. I'm in that phase where I'm a little bit scared to let go right now. It's like, I want to let go, but I don't know. So I'm monitoring production, from an agent standpoint, and then from my standpoint, and I feel like it's still a little weighted to my side because of just being fearful of letting go. But I can tell you, I'm in the process of doing that right now. I still do run listing appointments. I rarely ever work with any buyers, but I'm in the process of shifting to getting out of the business and just managing it.
Yep. Yeah, it is a tough transition. It took me 7 years. I regret not doing it earlier, but a lot of it is that, dude, it's scary, right? Because then now you're relying on everybody else bringing in income and not you. And I stepped out prematurely, even though it took me 7 years, because I was overly optimistic, right? So my team production was covering all of the expenses and some, but they weren't fully covering all the expenses plus a salary for me to draw to the company. and I had some money in the bank, so I was okay with it. But it literally took over a year of me stepping fully out of production until it got to the point where I was able to draw a good salary out of the company, because I stepped out prematurely, right? So it's hard to really time that, you know what I mean?
Sure.
So dude, I know too though, it's not just expireds that you guys are doing, man. I was reading somewhere that you built this like massive database of 6,000 plus leads, and you guys have doing a lot of different online marketing. Walk us through that, man, because it seems like you're killing it on the expired side, but you're also killing it on the online marketing side.
So what I did from the expired standpoint is I think the way we grew the business the quickest is the fact that we took a lot of the money we made and reinvested it back into what we knew we were good at. So, like if, for instance, when I first started calling expireds, I was literally like opening the MLS and like going to the white pages and trying to find numbers. And so once we had some money coming in, then we would invest in like RedX, right? And so then I had RedX, and so I got more efficient that way. And then when I had some more money coming in, it's like then we would invest in like Vulcan, and then we would invest in like BombBomb to try and enhance everything that we're doing every step of the way. Until now, we've taken expireds to the extreme. So it's like if I've got two ISAs, I've got a director of lead generation. So we've got email, we got mail. So we're at capacity on expires. Like I don't know anybody doing it better than we are as it relates to handwritten bond cards. Like we're literally like we're at our max on that with the ISAs and everybody calling them. So you're right. So then there has to be a natural progression. It's like, what do you do next? Because the great thing about real estate is there's all these different pillars that you can have success in, be it for sell by owners or whether it's online lead generation or networking with your sphere of influence. So then we went really all in on kind of like the internet lead generation. And we've been doing that kind of at a high level for probably the last 15 months or so. And so we're generating, we're a substantial amount of leads each month. And so we've got it set up to where those leads come in, they go to the agents, and and then the leads have to be set up or scheduled to follow up if they don't want the ISAs to hit the leads. So we're really intently involved in right now in just making sure that there's not gold in each and every one of those buyer leads that come in, because we also know that about 30% of those leads that come in have a home to sell. So there's listings there as well. So we've got the ISA team calling the buyer leads on the lead generation, and we work with a company that is like a boomtown. It's Commissions Inc. Yep. And then so we've got 4 different platforms. We've expanded into the Cincinnati market now. We've got 2 platforms down there, 2 platforms up in the Dayton area, and then the ISAs are calling into those. So we're just to answer your question, we're really heavily involved in the online lead generation and follow up. To try to create more business on top of the business that we already have from expireds.
Yep, love it, man. So how do you differentiate? Because it sounds like you have your ISAs calling on some, you have your agents calling on some. So I'm guessing there's probably maybe a different split structure between those. How do you differentiate who gets what and what that looks like?
Well, we like the way my team is set up is my agents can list and sell real estate. They can list real estate if they have come in and shown that they have done a certain number of deals. Like they have to do 20 deals before they're ever allowed to go out on a listing appointment. But so when the leads come in, the leads go out in a round robin fashion, and the requirement of the agents is, and this will sound cliche, is that they call them in the first 5 minutes. We like them to call in the first 30 seconds. They have to call in the first 5 minutes, and they have to make contact that day. If they don't make contact that day and they don't schedule a follow-up for within 24 hours, then the ISAs can go in and call those leads, even if they're in the agent's pipeline. And so there has to be some sort of a follow-up that's been set. We don't allow follow-ups to go past 30 days either. So even if they talk to a lead and the lead says, we're not buying for 6 months, they still have to have a 30-day follow-up set, because we still want them to either email the lead, text the lead, or send them something of value to check in with them in 30 days, because we know that if they call them in 6 months, the potential of them still knowing who that individual is, or even still wanting to buy a home is slim to none. So we put the ISAs in place, Josh, so that we know as kind of a catch-all so that we know it creates some urgency for our agents. You know what I mean? The idea is not to take anything away from the agents. It's just to enhance what they're doing. But if the ISA catches a lead from an agent, we do give it back to that agent, but it's at a 25% referral fee.
Okay.
So because we want, obviously we want help in paying for our ISA staff and our director of lead generation, and that's why those people are in place. And they do some neighborhood prospecting, some circle prospecting, and just souls like that. But they kind of split their day with the buyer leads and then seller lead generation.
So, ISAs, it's a thing that I don't want to say it's a new thing. I mean, a lot of high level teams have been operating with ISAs for a lot of years, but it's a new thing in the industry to a lot of agents, and it's really gotten popular, if you will, over the last year or so. Mm-hmm. So you've got your inside sales agents. At what point did you decide to bring in an inside sales agent? Doing what you've done now, when would you recommend an agent? Because sometimes we might do it too early or too late or whatever. When would you recommend that? And then if you're comfortable with it, can you give us an idea of compensation and what that would look like? Sure.
So the way we're set up right now, and I think you need to get to a point in your business, and if there was some magical number, I would say you need to be doing at least 100 transactions a year before you brought in somebody like that, and you need to make sure that you have you need to have 3 months expenses set aside in your operating account so that you can pay for that. So my ISA structure is set up through, we work with Pam's Consultancy. I'm not sure if you've heard of who they are. They're out of the Philippines. So we have 2 VAs that are full-time, and then we have a director of lead generation. The VA, our prospectors from the Philippines they're not really appointment setters. My director of lead generation is my appointment setter. He's licensed. So what I want those ISAs doing is I want them putting together like a list of nurtures and really identifying buying or selling timeframes. My director of lead generation is doing the actual conversion for me right now. So what they're doing is they're teeing him up. He's really good on the phone, so they're teeing him up so that he's not making dials that aren't quality. Every dial he makes is a good quality phone call because they've already qualified that particular lead and their buyer or seller cycles, so that we know that they're going to be buying within the next 90 days when he calls them. So all they're doing, if you look at it very simply, is they're creating a better phone call list for him, and he's the converter. Yep. Love it, man.
So then with that, so you've got, okay, and I know it's really tough to really dial this in, but have you found, because I'll see some team leaders that just flood their agents with too many leads. They're giving them, let's say, 100, 200 leads a month, and it's just so overwhelming, because it seems like you've really got this process dialed in. Have you found a certain amount of leads, a threshold, if you will, that you find that an agent can have where they're able to convert and give them the intention, but also still take care of their current business?
Yeah, that's a great question, and we've experimented with that. We don't allow the agents to have any more than 100 leads in their database, and so the way we've got our platform set up is so that they each have their own independent login. They're allowed 100 leads. They're also allowed to prospect what we call the gold mine. Some people call it the pond. For new leads to replace any leads that they don't want in their top 100. So what happens is sometimes these leads, we have over probably 5,000-6,000 leads in our database right now. So if you think about it, we've got 15 agents, and you're doing the math on that. So that's 1,500 leads that are in our agents' pipelines, and then the rest are in our gold mine. So our ISAs prospect that gold mine as well as the agents to try and create more A+, A-, B leads so that those are in their follow-up list. So we give them an independent login to the gold mine, and then they have their leads, and they can assign leads from the gold mine if they find something there and swap it out with a lead in their pipeline. So they're not allowed any more than 100 leads in their pipeline. and they're allowed to prospect the gold mine, and then so they're generating business that way. I hope that answers your question.
Yep. So then, okay, so just in case there's any confusion here, okay, so let's just say, for example, your agent's on X split, whatever you have with them. They've got their 100. If it so happens that one of those falls out, slips, the ISA team converts it, they're going to have their split plus a 25% referral fee probably 25% referral fee off the top, paid back to you, the team, and then they have their current split. But if the ISA doesn't convert it, does the ISA then get paid on what they don't convert? Do you or not? I guess not your VA ISAs, but your director of lead operation.
So the way we have him set up is we bonus our ISAs, so we pay them an hourly, but we bonus our ISAs on the number of appointments set, and we make that a competition for them. So at the end of the month, whoever sets the most appointments that show up, then that one wins the bonus for that month. Okay, so we make it fun and have some competition. Steve is bonused so that if the ISA actually sets up an appointment, which is more rare, but they do that, then we give Steve a 10% override on that out of his department, because he's managing them, coaching them, and spends time with them. If Steve sets the appointment himself, then the agent is due 25% of their 50% that I pay them. You see what I'm saying? Yep. So if their commission, if we have a $10,000 commission, and the commissions and we're splitting it 50-50, $5,000 goes to the team, $5,000 goes to the agent, minus the 25% referral fee that's then paid out to my director of lead generation.
Gotcha. Yep, love it. All right, dude. So I know you recently talked about, or you talked earlier about expansion, and now you've opened into another marketplace. This is a big topic right now.
Yeah.
I was just on a team leader panel out here in Arizona, and that was one of the questions they had of do you plan on expansion? What does this look like? So walk us through that, man. I mean, because you see a lot of people getting it. You see more people that have gotten it wrong right now than are getting it right, and there's some people that have really gotten it right. So how do you know if it's right to expand, and how do you know it's right for you?
Yeah, it's funny. I just got back from the ESO class down in Atlanta, and it was packed, and it's like one of those buzzwords where everybody gets super excited about it, and then people try it and they don't realize actually how hard it actually is. I'm fortunate enough to live in between two markets where we were going that way anyway. I mean, I'm more so in the Dayton, Ohio area, but I'm literally only 30 minutes from Cincinnati. So by going into Cincinnati, we actually almost, not quite, but almost doubled our average price point. So that's where we needed to go if we were going to make more money. And so, I think the jury's still out on a lot of this. I think that, you're going to find that a lot of people do try it and a lot of people do fail, but I think you'll find also that you'll see some people having some success, and you see these mega teams now that are coming into not our market in particular, but they're going into some of the major metropolitan areas and having some success with this. And then you talk to your agents that they go and they try. They don't really understand it because they're not generating enough business in their own market to understand how to generate business in another market that they can't even manage. So I would tell anybody that was thinking about doing expansion is do it somewhere that's preferably in your state, and preferably that you could drive to within a couple hours, because you want to have some level of management when you're doing your first expansion. You don't want to live in Ohio and expand into Nashville as your first expansion, because I think you just have a much bigger chance of failing, because you don't really have a good feel on managing that. And I would say if you're not generating leads locally where you're at, then no way should you be, or at least enough leads to sustain a profitable business. No way should you be thinking about going into another market and trying to generate business there, because you don't have it where you're at.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree. I hear a lot of these expansion teams where they're like, oh, I'm in Phoenix and then I'm in San Diego. I'm like, well, there's no commonality. There's no demand there. We just expanded to a market that's 2 hours north of where we are. And I literally was looking for every single reason to say no to it. Right? But it was one of those things where we had the demand. We had 8 agents. Their office just closed up there. They were actually one of my coaching clients. They wanted to do this. They're doing about $25 million in production a year. We dove into it, and it took some months to make the decision. And we finally said yes to it. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how all this goes, man, especially as we are amongst this market shift to see how all this plays out, dude. So you got a lot going on, dude. Now you're in 2 marketplaces. You got a lot of agents. You got all this going on. You got to train your agents. You got to, like, how do you inspect what you expect, keep all this together, plus, dude, do your own production as well?
I can tell you, that is just all about people, man, at this point. So I'm not just like looking for listings now. I'm looking for people. Like I've become more of like, I prospect for people now. I don't prospect for houses really anymore. I'm prospecting for people. So like a large percentage of my time every day now is figuring out like, how do we get the right people on the bus and get them in the right seat? So the answer to your question is like, we've got some really good key people and they're driving, our systems and processes right now at a very high level. And it's allowing me to go out and work on the business versus working in the business. So we're actually just, we're perpetuating the growth by having these key people in place. And so I can tell you right now, for me, as I transition out of the business, that it will become more about, finding those key players and growing out with the right people versus growing out. Because I know if I get the right people in place, the mission's there. You know what I mean? They know what we do. If I get the right people in the right spots, then, everything else will take care of itself. Because we know what we're here for. We know what we're going to do. We're looking for grinders, man. We're not. I've made the mistake of just, hiring everybody that could fog up a mirror. And it's just like they drain your time, energy, and resources, man. It's like, it's just a mistake to do that.
Yeah. So when it comes to hiring the right people, man, because this is the thing that a lot of people have a difficult time with, because it's hard to get it right, dude. It's different, I think, for like an assistant, that you can kind of dial in. When it comes to agents, because man, I've had so many that. I'm like, crap, did I make a mistake here? And then they blow my mind and they do amazing. Then I've had them where like, oh, this person's going to be a rock star, and they're so massively disappointing. So I know it's never a perfect system, but have you learned any techniques that have helped you get it more right than not?
Yeah, I think for me, it's really about, and most people will fight this because I think a lot of people hire out of necessity, unfortunately, and that's just no way to hire. You really should never hire out of necessity. You because when you hire out of necessity, you take shortcuts and you don't do your due diligence. And I think that if you do your due diligence, like whether it be through like a career visioning class or something like that, it is totally worth any amount of money that you would spend on learning how to hire the right people. Because unfortunately, I've done it the hard way. I've learned that not taking my time and bringing on the right people is created a scenario where I'm in business, or I have been in business in the past with people I didn't want to be in business with. And so it's just, now I'm really fine tuning like my interview structure. Like when we sit down with somebody, we're making them, do certain things. Like they might have a 90-day period where they come in and we might make them do the bold 1000. Like we're going to put them through some sort of a grind so that we know, because we're a prospecting based company. That's our foundation. That's how I built my business. And that's how we know we can sustain through any market, is through prospecting. So we're making them grind right out of the gate, and we know if they can make it through that, then ultimately they'll make it on our team. And a lot of people, if they come in and you're saying, okay, it's 1,000 calls a week, and it's like, okay, and they're looking at you like a deer in headlights, maybe at that point that they're not the right person. And then and it's not just that; it's about doing your due diligence, like calling references, and then just making sure that they've had some level of success in their past.
Yep, love it, bro. So, with going back to your lead follow-up, your expireds and your online leads, because everybody today wants 6-minute abs, right? It's the instant gratification. Everybody's running sprints, not marathons. we know your average internet lead is what, like 6.7 months out from even wanting to sit down and commit to working with an agent.
Sure.
Even expires. People think, oh man, it's such a small percentage that are ready to list right now today. A lot of them want to take a break and a breather. And it sounds like you guys have a really good nurture campaign. So, with your expireds, for example, you're hitting them day one, then you kind of talked about some handwritten notes and some things. Like can you just give us a general outline of what that process is? How long
Sure.
do they stay in your funnel? Is it indefinite? What does this look like?
Yeah, so we try and get all the information that we can on a potential prospect. So we want to know why they're selling, obviously, or why they're buying, what their time frame is. Then obviously we're getting contact information as it relates to the address, obviously, the email address, any other channel that we could have so that we can market to these people, we're getting. And so we create we create these different nurture cycles based on their time frame to buy or sell. And so, like, for instance, when our ISA, if they talk to a buyer or a seller and they're saying, we're not doing something for 12 months, and so we immediately, we have a process to where we subtract 4 months because we know they typically do something a little bit sooner than that. But then they go into a drip campaign through Commissions Inc. And so they're constantly getting dripped on. We assign them a home evaluation, and then they're also getting neighborhood sales. And then we do a marketing newsletter through a company called Pat Zaby. And then the director of lead generation follows up with them on, again, he's part of the nurture cycle for those particular people who have identified an opportunity. So that goes back to, once the ISA sets and identifies a buyer or seller cycle, they can go in then in Commissions Inc. and then reassign that lead, set a follow-up for Steve, and he doesn't have to do anything. It just shows up in his pipeline to call that lead on that particular day because we've set the guidelines out with our ISAs so they know what they're supposed to do. So, we again, it's land, sea, air attack. It's, it's a mailer, it's a phone call, it's an email, and even a text message in some cases because, we're finding out how people like to communicate with us. So really, like I said, I don't feel like that there's anybody, at least that I've talked to here locally, that's doing that type of reconnaissance on their leads and making sure that they're being followed up with. Because I can tell you this, and this is something that you've heard over and over, and it's almost become cliche. The fortune is in the follow-up, my friend, and that's not just with leads. That's talking about recruits as well. So if we talk about recruiting agents, the fortune is in the follow-up. Do what you say you're going to do. Like if you tell somebody you're going to follow up, then freaking do it. See, my agents, they know that we're not just looking for the home runs. See, I think that's what most agents do. Like they'll call expireds the first day. If they don't want to relist their house, they're like, I'm out. You know what I mean? And we're doing all this stuff on the back end. That's where we set most of our appointments, man. That's where we're hammering expireds. Is I don't think anybody's doing it better than we are from the back end follow-up perspective.
Yep, I love that, man. Yeah, and it's 90% aren't relisting out of the gate, right? So you're capturing such a big, the masses after the fact. Do you have any, for your team, for you guys, what do you find is the average time that expired lists after their home hit the expired? Is that something like 7 months, 12 months? Do you have any data there just to give people an idea of how long this stuff actually takes and how long they need to be willing to play the game for?
Yeah, excellent question. I think that for the most part, what we've learned is that most expireds will relist within 6 months. The people that aren't relisting right away will relist within 6 months. Like right now, it's the market's very cyclical because we have seasons here in Ohio. It's like you'll get on the phones right now and you hear the objection right now is, oh, we're going to relist in the spring. You know what I mean? And so that's what you hear right now. So 6 months is a really good gauge on, we think almost 90% of those people that don't relist right away will relist within the first 6 months.
Yep, love it, dude. So then as far as, because I know that you're still in production yourself personally, how do you pick and choose what goes to you? Is it just listings? Is it certain areas? Is it certain price points? How do you, as you're transitioning out of production or in less production, how do you make that deciding factor of what you're going to take?
So That's a great question. I think right now I'm taking stuff that's just in communities that I'm interested in listing here locally. Probably in the most part we're doing stuff that's over like 200 grand, and then that's local. So the way we're setting everything up right now with our expansion is that, so now that we've expanded down into that Cincinnati office, and now that I'm trying to get out of production, is we're setting agents up so that we're calling them like expansion pods. So I'll have a team leader for each expansion pod that we do. So, like for instance, when an agent on our team gets to $5.8 million or 36 transactions, they get to move into a team leader position. And then what they'll do is they'll take their own Commissions Inc. site with their own set of agents, and then they'll be paid an override on the production of their people. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And so we can create these pods. We know for a specific number, and we know how many deals they have to do to be profitable. And so right now I've actually got one agent that's transitioning into a team leader position down in our Cincinnati market. So she'll be taking over there with a team of 5 agents and running that pod down there. And then I'll have another agent here before the end of the year that will actually take one of our Dayton pods. So you can see what that's doing is it's actually taking more of my management responsibilities and then putting it on our team leaders. And then I'm paying them an override based on the productivity, so that they know that productivity from a management standpoint goes off me on them, and then again frees me up to do more of the stuff that I want to do. So answer to your question too is those listings that are close, I am still taking those, but eventually the reward of being a team leader will be that those leads will go out to them. And the only thing I want to do at the end of the day is I just want to be able to run a mastermind of our team leader group, and then they can take what they learn from our group sessions and take that out to their productivity meetings with their own teams.
Yep. So powerful. Yeah, you get to a point where you're like, okay, I can go on this listing appointment, and let's say I go out there and sell this, and they refer me, between the life of this lead, life of this client, and the referrals, maybe I get 4 deals out of it. Or I could use that same amount of time, energy, money, effort, and recruit a great agent that the life of there with my team could result in 50 transactions. Right? So yeah, as a team leader, you get to that threshold of it's always what's the best and highest use of my time. So love it, man. So obviously, dude, I mean, you've went in 3 years. I mean, you've expanded a lot, not just in your numbers, dude, but overall growth, overall mindset. I know you've learned a lot throughout this process. What does that look like for you when it comes to your self-development, dude? Because this stuff isn't easy to figure out, to do. It's a constant growth, phase that we need to be in. What does that look like to you as far as your self-development on a daily, weekly basis?
Yeah. So like for me, ego has always been my enemy. Right now, I mean, we used to be the Wall Group. We've changed to the Love Ohio Living Team. I'm taking my name off everything, and we're making it more about the Love Ohio Living Team. So for me, and letting my ego go is just and my board numbers are falling, and just because I really don't care about any of that. I want, it's not really about the fame. The fame was important to my ego, and as I relinquish my ego and I become more about my team members and helping them grow, that's when we've seen some really explosive growth. And so I will continue to help other agents that, granted, that want to be here and want to be successful. And that's what my journey is becoming about, man, is just really taking what I have and helping other agents grow their own businesses within our channel, within our Love Ohio Living channel. And so, personal developments, man, it's always been about just like, podcasts. It's always been about reading books. Mindset is huge. Like, I think so many agents mess up because, they have the skills. All they do is they go out and learn skills. So they learn skills. They never get the mindset right. You know what I mean? So they're still having those self-limiting conversations in their head. You know what I mean? That you're not good enough. This person's going to say no. So they have all these skills, but they still have this voice inside their head that's saying, you suck. This person's not going to answer the phone. They're going to yell at you. They're going to cuss you out. So mindset has been huge just in my own personal journey. And so, I mean, personal development, I'm really glad you asked that question, because to me, that's the biggest thing, man. I mean, it's about personal development. It's about going through these different stages of your business and then realizing who you want to become. You know what I mean? So day one, when we did 57 transactions my first year, it's like I wanted to be Mike Wall Real Estate. You know what I mean? And I wanted to do everything. And then you go through this stage where like, I don't think I do want to do everything. You know what I mean? I think I want some help here. And then you want to do, and then I think most entrepreneurs, like, I want to set this up totally passively. You know what I mean? To where I can do what you're doing. You know what I mean? Step outside of the business and work on other ventures. And, we have an investment company now, and, obviously we're investing in real estate and doing some flips and buying holds and stuff like that. So that's the beauty of this whole thing, man, is just that there's so many different things that you can do. Personal development, though, is just key.
Yep, love it, dude. So, if you could go back now, right, 3 years into this and, 400 or so home sales later, if you could go back and talk to, the Mike Wall 3 years ago when you first made this transition into real estate full time from your corporate job, and you could give yourself like 2 pieces of advice, right? Yeah. Knowing what you know right now, what would those 2 things be?
The first piece of advice, the first piece is just really easy. It's, for me, it would be just people. You hear me, I keep coming back to that, but I was terrified, man, to hire people, because I always knew that like I could do it myself and I could rely on myself, but I was scared that if I hired somebody else, then those people relied on me. You know what I mean? So I would just go back to myself then and say, just do it, man. You know what I mean? Because the biggest gains we've ever made in real estate were when we hired. It was never about like the bringing on a new like Commissions Inc. platform or bringing on Vulcan 7 or anything like that. It was when we brought on the right people. So you can never make a mistake, I don't think, hiring the right people. I mean, I totally believe that. So I would definitely go back and tell myself that. And then I would go and like, we just kind of, talked about this before, but like the whole ego thing, I think for me is I would just I would say straight out of the gate, we would go in and I would build my business where it was not about me, but it was more about the business and what the business can do and what the impact that it could have on other people's lives.
Yeah, it's so weird, man. I went through that transition several years ago too, and we started interviewing all the agents that were leaving us. Right? It took me years to do this, and then finally I became a responsible enough entrepreneur. I was like, well, why are these people leaving me? I always just assumed it was commission splits, right? But the number one reason then, which I was shocked about, was ego, right? Or identity, I should say. Yeah. They would go out there and get this listing, and then they get pissed off because they see my sign out there. And I mean, we are an egocentric business. Our agents are going to have egos. So it's like, well, who are you going to allow to win here? Do you want your bank account or that ego? And it's
boom, that just nailed it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just how it goes, dude. But I also think, sometimes like we've got to stroke our own ego for long enough to realize that it's not important to us. Like, sure. I feel like that was kind of a natural progression that probably you and I both had to go through. So, all right, dude, Mike, what's the best way if anybody is maybe in your area and they're looking to join a team, get licensed, let's listen to this, in the Ohio area that you're in, or if they just want to reach out to you, learn more about you, jump in the Facebook group, what's the best way to get in touch with you and learn more about you?
So you can always email me at mike@loveohioliving.com, and you can always find me on Facebook.
Cool, man. And those, like I say, you guys are watching or listening, we'll have a link below to Mike's website, email, and that Facebook group too, so you guys can jump on in there and check that out. So, dude, I started this podcast. It's about 18 months ago or so, just because I got sick of all the smokes and mirrors out there. It's like, dude, there's a lot of great information, but there's a tremendous amount of shitty information. And I'm like, dude, let me just go out there and interview the doers, cats like yourself that are in the trenches doing this at a high level. So with that being said, those that are watching right here are watching because they want to go out there and create like what you've created, right? So any last piece of words or inspiration or advice you'd like to leave our listeners with so they can go out there and create the life they know they want and deserve?
Sure. I think the best piece of advice, I'll give you 2. If you get into this business and you're successful early on, reinvest in your business. Don't spend your money. Don't go out and buy, stuff that will not give you a return on your money. And I think that is critical. And then secondarily, I think, going back to what you said, just continue to work on yourself every single day. You know what I mean? Be ritualistic about it. When you get out of bed every morning, let that be the first thing that you do is you put inspiring words and that you you continue every day to work on yourself, work on your mind, work on your body, and just keeping everything in alignment.
Yep, love it. Powerful words. And to those watching, listen, I know I end every podcast with this, you guys, but information without implementation is truly just the start of delusion. Information is not power. It's taking that information, taking action on that creates power inside your world. So Mike just dropped so much knowledge on you guys. Take something that you learned from Mike, go out there and implement immediately. Don't wait. Take action right now so you can create the life that you know you want and deserve. And Mike, dude, I know how busy you are, man. This has been a massive honor having you on the show. Truly appreciate you taking time to be here, dude. It truly means a lot.
Absolutely, man. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, you got it, brother. All right, you guys, we will see you next time.